Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cyber Data Roundtable podcast. I am Alex, the host here, and today we'll be speaking on the truth of the dark web. And bringing in for that with me, I've got a fellow analyst here, does a lot of our vulnerability scanning, Chris Z.
Hey, Alex, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Excited for this topic. Quite a bit to touch on. I know we have quite a bit of notes.
Yeah, absolutely. The dark web, even though it can be small, it's very big in history and also, very big in not knowing. A lot of people out there don't know about the dark web or have some myths behind it, and hopefully we can debunk those today and help people learn a little bit more about what the dark web is really about.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely a topic there's a lot of curiosity around, especially, with cryptocurrency as it's been, like the transactional currency basically for the dark web for a while. I think there's a lot of interest with it, and like you said, a lot of almost a mystique or mysticism associated with it.
A lot of curiosity, and we'll dive as much as you want, Alex, into the dark web and how it works, really.
All right. Well, I guess just for starters here, again, we try to speak to a fairly general audience with this podcast. We want to keep it low enough to where anyone looking to get into tech can have a good feel for the topic we're covering. But hey, if you're in the industry already, hopefully you can pick up a thing or two, or just see what a couple people who are learning on the fly have to say. So I guess just as a primer, especially for people not familiar already, could you give me a little bit of an explanation of what the dark web is? Or I know there's a few different layers of the internet in general. Just, I guess, an overview of what that looks like.
So yeah, all right. So this is a great question because a lot of people don't know what is dark web, what is deep web, what is the regular surface web that we see pretty much every day. So I like to think of analogies when it comes to that. So imagine an iceberg in the ocean, right? All right. You see the surface, and you see that little ice on the surface, right? That's your surface web. That's what we can see. That's what most of the people see or are generally familiar with.
So maybe like Facebook.com.
Yeah, Facebook.com, all your standard browsers, right? Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Internet Explorer, what's it now? Microsoft Edge now.
Sure.
So that's pretty much making it easily discoverable, access to everybody. They can go on Facebook, they can Google everything. That's pretty much what we're looking at as the surface web of things, right? Okay. Now, right underneath the surface of the ocean, you have a second layer of the iceberg, right? We're diving a little bit under the surface, and that's called the deep web. We're not there at the dark web yet. We're at the deep web. Mm-hmm. Now, that's stuff that's not indexed, as you say. So, email accounts, private databases, medical records, financial records, they're not easily accessible, right, to the people in the outside world.
So it's not something you can just pull open on Google.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
It's
mostly private databases that collect those that PII, PHI, stuff that you don't want, the general population to see. Obviously.
I guess maybe logins, probably your bank information.
Yep,
stuff
absolutely.
Like that.
Yeah.
So realistically, you're probably accessing the deep web a good part of your workday if you're working behind a credential wall or something.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of companies today, that handle PII or, HR companies, financial companies, if they're working with that, they are definitely in a deep web kind of platform.
Sure. Not as quite as alien as it sounds.
Yeah, right.
And that brings us to, I guess, what the deepest layer would be, or a big topic of discussion here. The dark web, but what would that be here?
Yeah, so the dark web, right? The bottom tip of the iceberg, completely submerged, hidden from sight. Even though everybody talks about the dark web and looks at it as something being big, right? It is actually a small portion of what the dark web is, right? So, like your surface web, like it's huge. The dark web is a portion of that, okay? Like it's not as big as everybody thinks it is, okay? To access it, I mean, you need a special software like Tor. Everybody's heard of Tor. That's a platform or a browser that pretty much makes your actions untraceable. It makes you totally anonymous.
Which is kind of the goal, right? Of a lot of people using the dark web.
It is the goal, right? It is the goal for you pretty much be non-existent in the web. And that could be for many things, right? Like it could be for illegal activities, which everybody knows that, like the dark web, Silk Road, buying things illegally. But there's also like it serves a purpose for like whistleblowers that want to say a company is doing something wrong or a country's doing something wrong. They can put it out on the dark web, right? Active political activists under oppressive regimes, right? So say you're in a third world country and they're watching your internet every chance you get on the surface web, right? Why not go to the dark web? Make you anonymous, right? To say, hey, this is what's going on. A lot of people use it for communication, right? People don't want the big brother to see what we're communicating about. So there's other things. There's training of the dark web. People like to train within it to, make it anonymous. Sometimes companies do it so, people won't get their recipe or get their new invention, so it's a variety of things.
See, and that's an interesting point to me. I work a lot with the privacy side of things here, and there's a thought with privacy where, like, hey, if you've got nothing to hide, then why bother hiding it? And to some people, just having, I guess, their own, forums or just the feeling that what they're putting out there is theirs, and it's only being laid eyes on exactly who they want it being laid eyes on. Correct. Or they want it being tracked to them. I think there's a great case for anonymity being preserved on the internet, but that's becoming increasingly rare on the surface web. Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. So, I think with the surface web nowadays, I mean, with Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all these things that are out there, and technology is just advancing with AI, I don't think anybody's safe from being anonymous anymore in the surface web.
Yeah.
I really don't.
And it's actually, I guess, to those purposes that I think we've got the brunt of our discussion today, which is debunking some of the myths of the dark web. Really.
Absolutely. I think this is a great topic to bring up, Alex, and I can't wait to get through these.
Yeah. So we've got a few written down here ahead of time, just some of the more common ones we see. We'll go ahead and go one by one, just see what we can think about them. So to begin with, a lot of people kind of think the dark web is basically infested and maintained by this criminal underworld, right? That basically there's no use of you being there if you're not wanting to interface with that criminal side of things. Is that true?
I mean, is it notorious for hosting illegal activities? Yes. But it is also used for many legitimate purposes. Like you said, privacy focused, right? Individuals, political activists, which I brought up last time. And, researchers and law enforcement agencies also operate on the dark web to conduct investigations and understand online criminal behavior. So it's good for training as well. I know, I use it for training purposes as well, for pretty much privacy, being anonymous. It is hosting for illegal activities, but a lot of people believe that if you go on Tor and you go on the dark web, it's illegal. And that's just not true. That is just not true. I mean, if you look at like illegal guns or pay for illegal guns or pay for like anything illegal, that's illegal, obviously. But the dark web is not entirely criminal. There's a lot of forums on there that are not illegal. There are a lot of, pretty much forums or discussions that are just not illegal, and people just write to be anonymous.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess one thing that I think is interesting for people who think about accessing the dark web is they tend to think they're going to stumble upon some horrible things, right? Like, you hear all about these forums that, they could have all manner of graphic content or, crazy discussions, or, anything could be for sale.
Illegal activity, right. So, I mean, you just going on the dark web is a little bit, let's just say this, you just going on Tor and snooping around a little bit is not going to find you some disturbing images. Or images or forums or illegal activity. It takes a little bit more than that. It's not just like you go on and there's something illegal right in front of my face. No, yeah. Doesn't work that way. I mean, truly accessing those things generally requires specific searches and knowing where to look, right? So looking at what .onion website that you want to go to, right? So you got to do a little bit more research about where you need to go, and it's just not that easy to just accidentally stumble upon such that content, right?
Kind of got to be looking for
it. You got to be looking for it. You got to be looking for it. You got to be wanting to cause trouble for just like to find those things, right? But at the same time, it's just like you have to be safe as well. Like, we'll bring that up really quickly too. Just don't press anything that you see on the dark web too, because that can also make you non-anonymous, right? They can steal your data that way, spamming and all that stuff. I mean, there's almost no rules to the dark web, like you and your regular search engine, right? So,
yeah, and that's worth considering too. Is, I mean, it's probably about as safe as you let it be in some instances. I mean, if you go on whatever new version of Silk Road is out there and order a pound of Coke, put in your address, trouble might find you then.
Yeah, trouble might find you then. Same thing with like cryptocurrency, right? That's people why they make it anonymous to buy things on there. Is cryptocurrency is there's no traceable. It's not traceable money, so you can use Bitcoin or Monero to, buy things and be anonymous. Now, where you send it and, your house or something, that could be a little bit of a problem. So you probably need like a post office box or something that you have something that's being anonymous as well. So, I mean, it's not as easy as one might think.
Okay. And one myth I see too is I think a lot of people, just thinking about as safe as, we just said it's about as safe as you make it, but by default, I think a lot of people think that it's totally anonymous and safe. I mean, is that true? Can you really do almost anything on there? And if you don't, type in your explicit details, you'd be safe?
I mean, yes and no, right? So, using Tor, going on the dark web, being anonymous, is it safe or being anonymous? Yes, you are being anonymous, but are you safe, right? So, me as a user or someone out in the general population that doesn't know too much about the dark web, they can still be vulnerable, as I said, to scams, malware,
phishing, right?
Phishing. Don't just press something that you want to press. And, I mean, there's no rules. So you press something like a phishing, like you would with a phishing email, right? So if you press something, they're going to find out your information. So, I mean, it's yes, if you're safe and take precautions, you can be anonymous. But if you just start clicking, hey, let me check this out, the importance of caution caution is the key word. Yeah. Be very cautious of what you're pressing.
Yeah. I mean, for as mindful as we always pitch it being on the surface web, you could imagine an unmoderated place like these sites that could be set up by any manner of cyber criminals or otherwise. A lot of that comes down to awareness.
Absolutely. You got to be aware of what you're pressing and what you're doing.
And now, one additional point, I guess, while we're on the topic of safety and the dark web, let's say you wanted to access it yourself, check it out, decide, I want to be cautious, but, I want to see what's on there. I want to see, maybe there's a cool, a political message board or something I want to check out. I guess for starters, what goes into accessing the dark web?
Oh, that's a big question, right? So what I can say about this is, accessing the dark web is probably through your Tor, right? Your platform, your Tor network. And then the onion router, right? That's what Tor means, right? The onion router. Tor, right? Huh. So it's specialized browser designed to make you anonymous. Layers of layers like an onion. Layers and layers like an onion make you anonymous, full of, it encrypts data, multiple layers of routes, nodes that pretty much ping to different nodes that make you anonymous, right? This helps you conceal yourself from your location or conducting network surveillance or traffic analysis, right? So no one's going to really know where you're at as long as you take precautions, right? Like you're not clicking on everything. You're using a VPN as well, which we can get in a little bit later. I mean, that's associated with risks, right? So to go through that, if I was going to use a Tor browser, I would also use some other things that would make me put an extra layer of security, even though the onion router is pretty well equipped. But knowing that my Tor is updated to the last update, also going through a VPN, NordVPN, some kind of VPN to change your IP address. I also use sometimes, I use like a virtual machine, so it changes the IP address. I've also used a USB, drive that has an OS on it that is just completely just that OS, so it doesn't ping to anything. It's not actually my computer. So almost kind of like a virtual machine kind of action there, but pretty much you're using an OS thumb drive to load a totally different OS system. So Linux, or you could go, regular Windows with that. So I've done that before, just for precautions, right? So, because can you trust the Onion browser? Yes and no. You never trust everything 100%, right? You just, in our world of cybersecurity, right? We never trust everything 100%. And
a single point of failure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen it through time and time again that you can mitigate issues as much as possible, but there's always going to be someone smarter than you or knows a little bit more about getting your information, and it's going to be taken. So using these precautions, right? So will help you in the Onion router. So the Onion router is good, but I also would take precautions with a VPN or a virtual machine.
Yeah, I think the additional layers always make sense there. VPN, honestly, I see a lot of cases for using it all the time, but especially with something like that, I could see the case. And honestly, yeah, a virtual machine or something like using a device you might not care so much about.
Right.
It's probably easy to get malware or something like that off the deep web or a dark web.
I mean, you could use a Raspberry Pi. I've used before just like little Dell micros that don't have a lot of RAM, don't have a lot of like 256 of SD, has no information on it. I put a VPN on it. I retrace my IP address, all that stuff. So if worse comes to worse, I start looking at things, right? I start looking at things on the dark web and doing my training. If something spam was to happen, right, it wouldn't be that bad because there's no information of me on there.
Okay, so we've touched on some of the lighter sides of the dark web here, but realistically, there's criminal activity on there too.
Oh, absolutely.
And one of the things, especially in our role as consultants here, that we deal with quite frequently is the issue of dark web data breaches, basically. And
absolutely.
I mean, I guess if you wouldn't mind, what exactly do we mean by that?
Well, data breaches, right? So your data is compromised, either your personal information or health, like if a company has health information. But as we're talking to the general public, it's usually just a PII, like a personal information, my date of birth, maybe my email address, passwords, all that stuff. They get sold on the dark web a lot, and we get hacked a lot. So, and you don't know about it, right? You don't know about it, and then your card starts missing. Not missing, but like money gets taken out, and address changes, password changes, right? So,
and that's a great point. Actually, is that you can't because I've heard of that. They have these password lists. Sometimes people collect when a site is breached, and they sell them on the dark web.
Correct.
And the kind of nefarious thing about it, right, is you can't just Google search for your password in Google and find that breach. That's a great use case for the dark web for these criminals, at least, is to have it be basically untraceable and out there and capable of being sold.
I mean, I could have a password now, you could have a password now that is breached, and we don't know about it. We have no idea until the last minute where either our data has been taken away or some kind of money is missing from our cards, address changes, changes in your email addresses, all that stuff, right? So we don't know about it. The good thing is there are platforms and websites out there to help us with that, right? There's vulnerability scanning, there's dark web scanning. Using a dark web scan, it's probably your best bet, and you should do it often, right?
Helps get ahead of it, right?
Yeah, you want to get ahead of it. Passwords are great, but they are, if you're password spraying, what I mean by password spraying is just a person knowing your email address and just spraying putting a whole bunch of password combination combos and just letting it go until it finds something, right?
Sure.
It happens all the time. People have all the time in the world to just do that so they can sell it on the dark web. So how can we get ahead of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's websites like Have I Been Pawned? There's dark web scanning websites that if you put your email address in, if you put your banking passwords in, or put a password in and say, hey, has this been on a list? It will check for that.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because dark web scanning is something we routinely suggest.
Oh, absolutely.
Audits we perform on companies, because to be real, most places aren't doing it. It's a little bit of a hole, because again, it's easy to forget the dark web exists. We so rarely interface with it or hear about it. But Yeah, so
I mean, I think we hear about, and sorry to cut you off, we hear about it more just because of how we are as consultants, but just nowadays companies just don't think about dark web scanning until it gets brought up by us, right? I mean, we have some clients who are like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Maybe we should do that. And we have, right? And we found some things that were not as great.
Yeah.
Found passwords to be compromised and emails to be compromised. So, I mean, companies out there and individuals don't even think about checking, right? The normal person.
Yeah.
And you should. You should. You also should enable MFA. Multi-factor, you definitely have to enable it.
But man, I mean, sometimes the crappy thing about it is the sins of the past can come to haunt you with these sort of things. Because I know, if you like using the same password years after years, you might find there's this one website from 2011 or something like that I might have signed into with a password I commonly use. Well, man, that username and password combination, if it's breached to the dark web, any site now that uses that is effectively gone. So, I mean, it definitely pays to know what's out there. And, to that end, it can help to have like a, professional dark web scan done with consultancy like ours or some other service out there that can, access it and look for you. Because, again, it can be sort of risky if you don't know
too much about it. Right, how to navigate. I agree.
But like you mentioned, a great source to do it, especially if you're just an individual and want to know for yourself. There's plenty of sites. I think you mentioned Have I Been Pawned?
Yep, Have I Been Pawned is the most popular one out there. If you're listening to this, I would strongly recommend you as an individual to check out your passwords, email addresses, all that stuff. And on the email side of things, if anything, email or any application that has MFA or multi-factor, I'd enable it to, have a password and then use a code on your phone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd agree. And plus, I think doing at least a Have I Been Pawned scan or something, I think you put your email, and I'm not even sure if you need an account.
I don't think you need an account.
It takes maybe like 10 seconds, and
it'll tell you if it's been on the dark web for sure. I don't know how 100% it is, right?
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a replacement for a full-on
scan.
From a company.
I'd also do for an individual, because we mostly work with companies, right? So as an individual, I probably with bank statements, all that stuff, credit, do a credit monitoring as well. There's some like LifeLock or something like that that are out there that check your credit all the time, check your if your banking is getting hacked into. They do emails now, so something to look into as well as a paid application. Have I Been Pawned is free. I mean, and you can do it by yourself, but in today's age, right? So AI, like a lot of advancing technology. I strongly recommend you getting a paid application just to have a peace of mind.
It could be worth a lot.
Yeah. Than losing, your identity or, money.
Right. It's easy to blow off until it happens.
Yeah, it happens, right? And that's how a lot of companies are, right? So, sorry to keep going with this, but that's how a lot of companies are, and I've seen it, that we don't need to worry about it. We don't need to worry about it until it happens, right? And then ransomware happens, and they're paying lots of money to either their insurance agency or to the actual hacker to get their information back.
Yeah. And I guess one thing probably be good to touch on too on that note is I guess if you do one of these dark web scans, Have I Been Pawned or whatnot, right? Yeah. And you find, hey, this site's been breached, this site's been breached, maybe gives you some associated emails or combinations or something like that, what should you do to help cover yourself?
I would definitely start changing those emails, either deleting them, like getting rid of them, or like changing the email address, changing the password, if it hasn't been compromised already. Sometimes it's already been compromised. And you go, say you haven't been to a site in like years on end, and you didn't even know that you had, a chase.com or something like that, some application that you don't think that you used in like 7-8 years, right? And it says it's compromised. Do you think you're going to get back in? Who knows, right? If you can't get back in, it's good to call, email them or say, hey, this has been going on. Can you just delete my account, right? But in the best case scenario, it's just changing those passwords, maybe changing the email that associated with that app, enabling MFA. A lot of applications now have multi-factor, right? So
Right.
Two-factor. So I would strongly recommend that as well. But for an individual, yes, that's probably the best option. Is if you see name at Gmail is compromised, I'm changing that email. I'm either getting rid of that email, I'm changing a little bit about that email, I'm adding MFA, I'm changing the password. When you find out about this, it's most likely your password, right? So I'm going to change my password first.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, realistically, that's probably the most direct way to avert most danger from it. And then probably, I guess at a company-wide scale, if you notice something, typically if you get a consultancy, they'll walk you through how to amend that. But probably the best call there is to initiate whatever data breach procedures
Absolutely.
you might have.
Yeah.
Maybe treat it like you would a surface web leak.
I agree.
But yeah. Okay. I think that gives us a good synopsis on the topic. One thing I guess I always like to leave off on any of these discussions is, how do we see, or specifically you see, dark web evolving, or I guess being affected with the future here? We have, cryptocurrency has been moving a lot. We have
new cryptocurrency now too, like Monero. Bitcoin's always going to be there until it dies out at some point, but Monero is a little bit cheaper, and that's what people are usually using now.
Yeah. Do you think over time the dark web is going to become maybe more or less prevalent, or do you think the day and age for a fully anonymous network is coming to an end?
I don't think so. That last part, I think the dark web is here and here to stay. So good and bad, right? Mm-hmm. Let's talk the good and bad about the advancements of evolving in the future for dark web, right? So with new technology out there, and the big one this year, and everybody's talking about it, is AI and machine learning, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the big thing, right? So with this, dark web is going to be tracked a little bit more with AI, I feel, and machine learning. The thing I mean by that is law enforcement and people that are trying to find out more about the dark web for illegal activity, they're going to use AI and AI platforms to try to monitor illegal activity, right?
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's one thing I heard too, is when they shut down the Silk Road, it was super coordinated effort required.
Right.
A lot of thought from law enforcement. How much of that could be automated out these days?
I think it can be. Is it going to take time? Obviously, AI is still pretty new to a lot of companies and law enforcement, and it's just new all around to what it can really do. And I think with AI and machine learning, monitoring and detecting illegal activities in the dark web, you're going to see an increase of. But on the other side of things, right, encryption technology, because of AI and machine learning, is going to go up. So what does that mean? Being anonymous is going to go up. Changing encryption keys all the time is going to go up. You not thinking about, hey, am I being anonymous, or should I change my IP address or encryption? Machine learning is going to do that for you, right? You're not going to have to think about that stuff in the dark web. I think there's going to be platforms out there like Tor browser that are going to use AI to help you be anonymous. Yeah. And more anonymous, if you can even be that.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, past that, now I'm not going to pretend for a second I understand half the tech behind blockchain and crypto stuff, but I know a big part of that is developing new ways to effectively decentralize servers, platforms, all that, which I'd say is, very reflective to the way networking works within this. So we could see, I'd say, advancements in maybe the protocols or the layouts of dark web infrastructure to where it maybe is more resilient.
I agree.
Over time as a result.
I definitely agree with that. I definitely think that the dark web is going to get bigger as well than this small portion, especially with the AI stuff. And because surface web, like we talked about in the beginning, everybody knows your name when you go on the surface web now. Yeah. It's getting out there where you're putting your information out there. Facebook.com, LinkedIn. I mean, we use LinkedIn all the time. Email addresses, certain things like that. You're not anonymous anymore on the surface web using Chrome or browser. Of course, like you can hide your IP address with using a VPN, but being totally anonymous, I think it's going to grow for a lot of people to go to the dark web if they want to be totally anonymous.
Yeah, I mean, especially with newer generations. I think kids now are learning to pirate and stuff like that earlier than before.
Yep.
The mystique that would previously been attributed to this dark web stuff is, I'd say, fading over time and probably becoming more accessible maybe. So I could see an interest growing for sure.
I think there's definitely an interest for people trying to be in the dark web or search for things in the dark web. I think you're going to see an uptick for sure, just because people don't want, I don't want people to know about my information, right? So, and it's out there. I mean, you look hard enough, it's out there. Especially with LinkedIn now. I mean, everybody knows about everybody. Yeah. What business they work for, what they worked for previously. I mean, your whole resume is on LinkedIn. You're going to find,
digital footprint.
It is a digital footprint for sure. And I feel like a lot of the individuals that don't want Big Brother to find out, a lot of things. Or just the regular person, I don't want anybody to know about my information, are going to go towards the dark web. So I think there's going to be an uptick for sure.
Yeah, I could see it
in the future.
I think it's something, probably definitely worth keeping an eye on. Both in just, if you're a business owner, maintaining a watchful eye on what might be going on there, and
absolutely
as an individual, who knows what kind of opportunities or interest could be phrased in that over time.
For companies too, I would also say big thing, especially if you have a big company of a medium-sized company of 200 to 500 employees. Awareness is key, and I'm big on awareness. I am huge on training and awareness and knowing what's out there not being hidden from the truth, right? So I feel like if you just tell them, hey, this is going to happen if you email PII to this person, or, it's not secure. Things are not secure anymore. Like, how do we make them secure? Let me show you the way. So awareness for employees is huge. And I think for our company, that's, we pretty much, for lack of better words, shove it down companies' throats. Hey, you need to do training. This needs to happen. So.
I mean, it's the simplest thing you can do to probably reduce your risk profile.
Absolutely.
The most significantly.
80% of ransomware attacks usually happens with the employee.
Gee whiz. That's
a rough ballpark, but yes. Usually because they click on something.
Yeah, and then it's like, how do you like the odds that at least one of those might be, somewhere lurking on the dark
web? Absolutely.
Could be right now.
So it's good to do dark web scanning, to just say it for the companies and individuals, dark web scanning, and just being aware of what's out there.
Yeah.
Awareness is key. Yep.
Ain't that the truth? Well, I think we got some pretty great coverage on this topic today. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, for having me. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Really awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a super, again, as a privacy professional, I think this is something worth a lot of consideration. Even if you are just in the more technical elements of the field, something worth keeping an eye on over time, because, again, who knows with the way tech is moving, how this might play a role going forward.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for listening in. If you have any questions further about this topic you'd like to know more about, feel free to send us an email or contact us through the website, or if you're accessing this through YouTube, leave a comment or something. We'll speak to it when we see it. Outside of that, thank you for listening in. We'll see you next time.